All right. Hello, everybody. All right. So we had a weird issue with the stream failing. So I had to set it up again, give everybody a couple minutes to get in here before we kick this off. Hope everybody's had a good week. Got a fun show lined up tonight talking about dental health and how it connects to a whole bunch of health problems that y'all may or may not know about. So while I wait for people to come in here, I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping since we had that hiccup. So feel free to leave a comment in the chat. Definitely want to hear from y'all tonight, especially if y'all have had any um, of your own kind of health conditions pop up from having a dental procedure. I'll say that whenever I work with a lot of folks, I do extensive histories trying to uncover a lot of things that either may have been overlooked by other people or you'd never been considered before. So, kind of like being a health detective. That's what natural practitioners really excel at. So, if you've ever worked with a homeopathic or a homeopath, sometimes you can get into like a 3 hour history on your first visit because they're really trying to understand you. We do similar things, and dental history, oral health is really important to how we do our our programs, understanding you as a person. So it's pretty common for me to hear people talk about their own when we look at their health history, they'll talk about, having a root canal or having an extraction or having metal fillings put in or removed. And usually, it's not always the case, but usually symptoms or some type of illness comes up following that type of procedure. And so we're going to get into that a little deeper tonight on, why that is. And if this has happened to you, then we're also going to talk about steps that you can take to start um, healing, healing your mouth, and uh, other procedures. There's some things that you can do on your own, but when it comes to dental health, there are some things that you might need a dentist for, such as extractions of root canals. Um, but again, we'll go over all of that tonight. So I think we're about ready to start. I just need to finish one final thing here. Make sure people on our other platforms know that we've had to start the stream over again. Don't want to lose anybody. Let's see where are. All right. That might take more time than I really want to deal with tonight. All right. We'll just leave it as it is. People can find us. All right, guys. So we're going to go ahead and start it from here. So, dental health. There's a lot of things here that we see with dental health that I wish people knew about. I don't want to pick on the dentist too bad tonight through this, but there's a lot of things we got to talk about that modern dentistry is doing that's I really don't think has been beneficial for us. And I would say we really do kind of have this unseen epidemic happening within, I'll just say modern dentistry, modern health system in general. Obviously, people are getting worse and worse and worse. And so we're going to see why the mouth is playing a role in this. The way I like to start talking about dental health with people is this old expression you've probably heard, and that is never look a gift horse in the mouth. And, a lot of times people don't even know what that means anymore. Well, back in the old days, the way that you would determine a horse's health, the way you would determine a lot of things' health would be just to look at their mouth. If their mouth looks relatively healthy, if the teeth look relatively healthy, then you could use that as a proxy to kind of tell the general health of that person or that animal. And uh, so if it's a gift, don't bother looking in the mouth to see if it's good or not. Just take the gift. But there's a lot of truth in that, a lot of old wisdom in that. A lot of your natural practitioners of various types will look at the teeth and say the teeth are the window to the body. And there's a lot of cool things about teeth that don't get enough appreciation. So we're going to talk tonight about the microbiome of the teeth. You heard about the microbiome in your gut, all these bacteria or friendly microbes that help your body thrive. Well, you've got one in your mouth. And some will say that your oral microbiome is dirtier than your own bottom. And they wouldn't necessarily be wrong. We're also going to talk about the electrical component and the light conductivity of teeth because there is both an electrical, a conductive, kind of like a circuit or a grid component to the teeth. And there's also an energetic connection as well. The ancient Chinese medicine somehow figured this out thousands of years ago that the teeth connect to all the major organs. And you can end up having a two-way street where if a tooth goes bad, it can have like a resonant effect with the correlating organ and cause the organ to have problems. The same way that if you have an organ that starts to have problems, starts to go bad, it's damaged, then you can start to have problems in the correlating teeth. That's wild, but we can confirm that that does exist. The mouth and the teeth in particular have energetic, and I would say electrical lines that run through them. So from your head down through your body, you have meridians, you have electrical conductivity kind of lines. This is why I say that the teeth kind of act like the circuits on a circuit breaker. So if something were to happen on one of your teeth, then you think that you're flipping that circuit off on the circuit breaker. And so you would expect, if the circuit flips on your let's say on your master bedroom, then you're not going to have power to the master bedroom or same to the kitchen. Well, teeth act in a similar way. And so when we see people start having organ troubles, we can kind of correlate that with what tooth or teeth that they're having an issue with. And while I'm not going to say that it's foolproof, 100% accurate all the time, the body is a lot more complex than to be able to always say one to one, it has to be this. But you do see correlations. So if I see somebody that has intestinal problems, or if I see somebody that has really strong heart problems, then sometimes I also see problems with the tooth. And it could be that specific tooth connected with the heart. Um, there's a root canal that was done, or the tooth got so bad that somebody decided to do a root canal, or they decided to do a root canal on that, and then taking their history, we find oh they've got a problem with with their heart or with their intestines that kind of popped up afterwards. I say okay, that's interesting. Yeah, if people want to look further into this, obviously you could type in Chinese tooth organ. There's plenty of ways you could write that out. Um, you could also look into acupuncture. You can look up the meridian lines of the body, and you'll see a lot of these. You'll see essentially a grid, and a lot of it runs through the different teeth. So this just kind of goes to show you that teeth are important. They do have a known connection with the organs. And when something goes wrong in them, we should take note. So, where do we want to go from here? Uh, how about we just kind of start here? Your mouth being a biochemical, an electrical, and an energetic system. I know I talked about kind of those things there. So let's start with that first one, which would be the biochemical side, the biology, stuff that everybody is in the West is usually familiar with. So, starting off with this familiar part, let's talk about poisons that get in the mouth. Let's talk about the microbiome. Let's talk about mercury. We'll talk about fluoride because those are definitely some big culprits. Now, a lot of times they don't call them mercury fillings. It's called silver fillings or silver amalgams. They don't use them. I wouldn't. You don't have them as much anymore. I think mercury definitely has gotten its deserved stigma to it that it's bad because there's not really an accepted limit of mercury or acceptable limit of mercury within your body. Mercury causes a lot of bad things in any biological system it touches, at least in mankind's. But yeah, mercury amalgam fillings. You remember mercury has a really low kind of like vapor point or a state of matter shift because mercury room temperature, put it in your hand, you can roll it around, it's liquid. It doesn't take that much temperature change to turn it into a gas. Um, the exact point escapes me, but we'll just say sub 300. Or what's scary is that it's actually low enough that if you're drinking hot coffee or a hot liquid, that the mercury that's in your teeth can actually start to off gas. It can vaporize. And so you get these micro doses of mercury right here in your sinuses, right here by your head or by your brain specifically. And then all this tissue, all these blood vessels right here that are just going to take, they can absorb and get into the cardiovascular system and start circulating through your body, depositing mercury wherever it decides to land. So we have this issue that mercury inside of our teeth doesn't stay inside of our teeth. That's not good. It's bad enough having mercury just sitting in there, poisoning the surrounding tissue. But the fact that it can vaporize at such a low temperature is concerning. And so, um, I do run a number of heavy metal tests. We do a specific mercury test called a mercury tri test that takes hair tissue, blood, and urine, and we're able to correlate organic mercury and inorganic mercury. So we can tell if you're getting mercury from if poisoning from fish, which would be organic type, or if you're getting hit with rare earth, metal mercury, such as what's found possibly in groundwater, stuff that's come out from fracking and other things, or from mercury amalgams or dental amalgams. And I don't have the I don't have the exact figure for this. I'm quoting it from memory, but there's kind of an old saying that if we find anything in the blood, then it could be 10 to 50 times greater in the tissues. So if we find mercury in the blood, that's very concerning. That usually tells me that something is so bad or so acute that we really something needs to be done about it. But for people that do have mercury amalgams, I'm always looking suspicious. I'm always thinking in the back of my mind, okay, this is going to change how we do our protocols because this is going to be a low and slow. It's going to be a long game. And we don't know exactly where that mercury is. You can do some energetic testing, you can do some muscle testing with frequency vials and see, is it up here? Does it resonate within their head? Does it resonate within their gut? Those are two big places they could go. With the mouth, especially, if you're drinking hot substances, if that mercury is off gassing, it's doing a few different things. because of its proximity up here, it could be getting into the brain, can be getting into the sinuses, it could be absorbing into the blood vessels, into the tissue, and going into circulation. You could also be drinking it, so it goes down through the stomach and then into the intestinal tract. And as I said, mercury is toxic to anything in human biology. So mercury not only is going to poison the microbiome in your mouth, and it's going to make these little good bugs in here go bad. It's going to kill them off. It's going to set up room for bad bugs to come in and eat the mercury. We've talked about that with parasites, how parasites can eat their weight in heavy metals. They're like toxic sponges, and they're trying to remediate the environment. So you're putting poisons in there. Those bugs are going to get defensive and try to do their job cleaning up the environment, and you're going to get caught in the crossfires like collateral damage. So, infections. All of a sudden, you start having problems with like periodontal disease or jaw, or the jaw rot or gingivitis. Tooth decay. The enamel starts eating away. It's not all just sugar. We got to really look at poisons as the problem, and we'll get to fluoride in a minute. But mercury is one I really have to stress on people because mercury has so much correlation with mental and disorders, very serious mental disorders, and also a lot of different toxicities. So if it gets down into your gut, I mean, it would be destroying your stomach. I would say cancers of all sorts are not off the menu. They're definitely something that we need to be looking at. There's also the issues of if it gets into the intestinal tract and really start messing with your gut and by proxy your brain. Uh, so we could have like a lot of gut inflammation, completely ruin the microbiome. And this is just one poison. This is just one toxin that we see a lot. Uh, I mean, if it gets up into the brain, there's so many problems, whether Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, strange neuropathies. And then one of the things that I mentioned, we're going to talk about a lot, because I think one of the biggest connections with dental health is the cardiovascular system. And I mean, it's bad if mercury gets into your cardiovascular system. It's going to poison your heart. It's going to damage blood vessels. It's going to have a lot of problems. And mercury is not the only problem. We can get, we can get fluoride. We can get root canals where you essentially get infections that just breed uninterrupted because the immune system has been cut off. And then all of the bacterial, fungal, parasitic toxins, as well as the bad bacteria, fungus, and parasites that grow within that cavity, um, or within that root canal. That mechanical motion of chewing every day and the inflammation that's brewing in there just ends up poisoning the mouth, and it pushes itself to the blood vessels and it gets into circulation. All that poison and those infections end up traveling through the circulatory system, damaging it, or the cardiovascular system damaging it. Then plaque has to come in and try to patch all of those tears. Plaque's doing its job. And then you're getting all these poisons and infections set up in the heart itself, not just traveling to the cardiovascular system. There is a doc who we use some of his resources. I've seen him talk a few times, and he uses a lot of the same protocols that we use. Um, He was a board certified cardiologist for years named Dr. Jack Wolfson. He does a thing called the natural heart doctor. So he used to do a lot of surgeries and things, all your conventional medical stuff on folks, and he rejected all that and threw it all away and went all natural. And so if you go listen to him, you'll hear him say, "Oh, yeah, he's talking about the same thing that I am. Let's use binders because binders bind up a lot of these poisons. Mold toxicity directly correlated to cardiovascular diseases and heart diseases. Dental health directly correlated to cardiovascular heart and diseases and heart diseases." And so it's not just me talking about that. And it's not even just him talking about that. I mean, it's great when you have a medical doctor who was a top cardiologist, a surgeon who kind of came from that side over to the natural side and is actually seeing um, measurable health improvements in people by doing the natural, um, by doing these natural protocols. Well, I would say this. I would say just about anything is better than a root canal. A root canal is a very, mm, I don't know. I'm not sure which would be worse, getting metal like mercury in the mouth or getting a root canal. So, as I just alluded to, a root canal essentially cuts off the immune system from that tooth. So the tooth may sit in there, but they say that the tooth is dead. Well, dead tissue is going to rot, and what do bacteria, fungus, and parasites do in nature? They eat away tissue. They break stuff down. And if you have that's breeding inside of that area with no immune system to patrol, how many of y'all remember Chaz or Chop? When you have an autonomous zone full of anarchy where you have no police, you have no government, you have nothing there to regulate that area, you get total anarchy and destruction. Think of a root canal similar to like an autonomous zone. There's no police presence, there's no law and order, there's nothing. You get a bunch of rogue, runaway infections that breed, and then all of the byproducts that they make, which we would call biotoxins, endotoxins, lipopolysaccharides, mycotoxins, and then all sorts of potent, neurotoxins, maybe excitotoxins. Just depends on what the bug is that's producing it. That's all festering, and it has to go somewhere. It's either going to damage all the surrounding tissue with it, or it's going to, like, by mechanical movement of the mouth through chewing, speaking, just by virtue of the mouth moving, it's going to start pumping this stuff into the tissues, into circulation. So it gets into the blood supply and travels around. And then all of that inflammatory junk not only gets thrown around through your entire system and finds different ways to deposit, maybe it gets deposited in the brain, maybe it gets deposited in the liver and the kidneys and all that's, those things can end up then forming cysts later or just causing damage to the tissue's function. It's tearing up the cardiovascular system as it's moving. The blood vessels, the arteries, making nicks here and there. Cholesterol or plaque has to come in and patch the surface, patch these walls, and then stuff gets into the heart. Um, that's kind of like a 40,000-foot view of why dental health is important, because when you don't take care of it, it can lead to these. That's how it can lead to these systemic issues. So, I think we've already talked a good bit about mercury. Gonna look at my notes and see if we've got anything else to add about mercury before we move on. So I do actually have specific actions of mercury. Now, you hear me talk a lot about mitochondria, your powerhouse of the cell, your energy making organelles within your cells. So mercury is able to cripple cellular ATP production. That means you can't make energy and you're getting cell death. Now, outside of your brain, your heart has one of the highest needs for ATP. I believe, like you could say, like your organs, 500 to 2,000. Your heart needs a lot more, like 10,000. Think about like your heart and your brain, 10,000 plus. They need units of ATP in order to be functioning correctly. So if you have a poison like mercury that's able to completely cripple and shut down ATP and damage that cellular machinery, you end up having cell death in the heart and the blood vessels. Now, we also have a thing called oxidative stress. Now, I think about this as, I don't necessarily want to say rusting, but oxidative stress is really bad. Chronic inflammation, and it can lead to the manifestation of many diseases, many chronic ones. And so mercury kind of acts like this catalyst that produces just massive amounts of free radical damage. And so overwhelms the body's antioxidants. Antioxidants, like vitamin C, glutathione, your body's essentially having to burn through all of its reserves to kind of put out that fire. And when it does it chronically, you start to deplete the body's critical resources. So your body doesn't have these left over to do its daily operations. And this also includes robbing from your bones. People end up getting osteopenia or osteoporosis. Usually there's been secret inflammation going on for a long time, and the body's just been having to rob from those bone deposits for years or decades, and it hollows out the bones. So oxidative stress is like for mercury can deplete those resources in a similar way, like your antioxidant resources. And you feel much better when you take vitamin C. And then as soon as you stop taking it, you kind of feel bad and crash. Yeah, because you're so completely depleted and you finally give it to your body. It says body says, okay, I can probably do something with it. And then it quickly burns through it. Um, we've got other stuff too, the gut endothelial dysfunction. This directly damages that delicate lining. Well, endothelial can also do arteries as well. We look at endothelial a lot with the gut, but anyway, endothelium. It's going to reduce nitric oxide. It's going to prevent blood vessels from dilating properly. So, okay, we know mercury has an issue with high blood pressure. Okay, great. So just having one toxin alone can affect your blood pressure. And it's because, at the advice of your dentist, you got that put in 30, 40, 50 years ago. And among other things, it's affecting your arterial function. It's also a primary initiator for atherosclerosis. Blood clots too increases platelet aggregation and key clotting factors, raises the risk of heart attack and stroke. Can fuel just basic inflammation, inflammatory cytokines, TNF alpha, which is tumor necrosis factor alpha, interleukin 6, and create just systemic inflammation. And then that systemic inflammation drives plaque. We say that, okay, plaque is caused by inflammation. So you start to hear people talk about inflammation now, and I always ask, where's the inflammation coming from? Sure, chronic disease or all diseases are caused by inflammation. Where's the inflammation coming from? And here's one of your answers. So, mercury just has a lot of scientifically validated causes for hypertension, coronary artery disease, myocardial infarction, or heart attack, and strokes. So, getting on to the root canals, just touching on that a little bit more. I'd say it's impossible to sterilize a root canal. It's a biological tissue with a whole bunch of bacteria and other things that live right there. They're going to try to do what they do in nature, and that's break it down and eat it. So let me see here because I think we already covered most of this on here. The bacteria, the endotoxemia. Um, I've got a couple studies here. I'll just reference this one real quick with a cardiovascular link to the root canal, because it's not like this stuff is not known. I've got citations from everywhere, even some cool ones in Russia for some of the energetic stuff that the West doesn't really look at. But um, let's see what this one says here. Circulating bacteria and inflammatory byproducts can directly affect major arteries, contributing to endothelial dysfunction and atherosclerosis. And then our clinical cardiologist should be aware of this and should consider, these endodontic infections as a risk factor for any type of cardiovascular events. Now, if any of y'all are dealing with this, has your doctor ever mentioned root canals? Have they ever talked with you about root canals or anything about your dental health? I hope that they have, but I don't know. One is if any of y'all are in natural health, you'll probably have heard of Weston A. Price, Dr. Weston A. Price. There's the Dr. Weston A. Price Foundation. They did a lot of stuff on here. And this was former head of research for the American Dental Association demonstrated over a century ago that root canal treated teeth from chronically ill patients when implanted under the skin of healthy rabbits would transfer the original disease to the rabbit with near 100% accuracy. Those poor rabbits. Why would you do that to a rabbit? Ugh. So I've got a question here about root canals and doing dentures. I would say, I would say definitely between the two, dentures would be a lot better. Um, if you're talking about like a denture, just something that you pop in, we're not talking about like permanent implants. I mean, those things you can always put, you can always disinfect them. You can use UV light. What is it? I'm trying to think of the other things that you can do. I mean, you can disinfect them. Could use alcohol. At least another thing. I don't want to forget this. I just mentioned. Stop using alcohol products in your mouth, like antibacterial stuff. You know, if you do that on your hands, it's bad enough because you need the microbiome. Your entire like your whole skin has a microbiome. That's how it keeps your skin regulated and healthy. We need germs in order to survive and thrive. So don't be using alcohol constantly. Don't be using that mouthwash stuff, especially with the dyes in it. I'll recommend some stuff that you can use that actually heals teeth, restores, remineralizes. Because there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of myth and about what your teeth can and can't do. So let me see if there's anything else to mention on the root canals. I think we pretty much covered all of that here. One thing I do want to touch on, uh, fluoride. Let me just see if I can find if I can find what I've written specifically on fluoride here. Um, I would think at this point, most people at least know that are aware that fluoride is not good for the body. Fluoride also has um, a known link to both dental fluorosis and skeletal fluorosis. Those are really bad diseases. And you know, the drug companies knew about this because the drug companies at one point had funded research into using fluoride as a drug itself to prevent bone loss. That didn't go well because when these drug companies were doing this, I know I talked about this. I don't remember if it was on a former episode. It may have been one of the first episodes that we did, but it had the opposite effect when they were studying it. I guess, to prove that hypothesis that it might help bone structure or bone density. They ended up finding out dental and skeletal fluorosis. So it's really interesting that it's been known. I believe it's been known for a long time too. But the fact is that it's known by your drug manufacturers because they tried to create a drug for it and found out that it had some really bad effects. Why in the world do we still get that put in toothpaste? Why do we still get recommendations from dentistry about using fluorinated products as the way to keep our teeth healthy? Maybe a conspiracy. I don't know. I could go down a lot of rabbit trails with that, but fact is fluoride is usually makes people docile and dumb. And I mean dumb, like lowering IQ in measurable, predictable ways. Dumb. So if it hollows out your teeth and it makes you stupid, that can't be good for your health. Now, fluoride is also a halogen. It's a member of the halogen family of elements, along with iodine and bromide. Now, fluoride and bromide, they can compete with iodine in your body. So if your body doesn't have iodine, then fluoride or bromide can end up getting pulled into the equation to do the body's biochemistry. It's not a good thing. And sometimes people feel really sick when they start supplementing with iodine because they start naturally detoxing off of those receptor sites and where the bromide and the fluoride is tucked in. And when sometimes people do high dose iodine detoxes, which I don't recommend to do unless you're well in your way of doing a pretty intense detox protocol, like months in, because people will start sweating out orange, yellow, brown out of their sweat and like stain the sheets every morning because they're starting to kick a lot of this stuff. They're starting to detox it out of their skin. It's really nasty. It's gross. And it's better out than in. But, you know, fluoride has this effect where if you don't have enough iodine in your body, you need to be aware because your body might be pulling in that fluoride or bromide, which is a different element, but it has its problems. Y'all may have heard of potassium bromide, which used to, I think it's still used in cheap bread or in bread making, but it has a known connection to causing cancer. Bromide is used as a flame retardant in a lot of things. So, your bedding, your sheets, number of your clothes, your car. I mean, you're not going to get away from these things. Um, so, just kind of as a side note, you're getting brominated and fluorinated with a lot of stuff. Fluoride in the water, fluoride in your toothpaste, fluoride in um, well, your medications. I mean, a lot of medications are built on the backbone of fluoride. Fluoride is like one of the main molecules, elements in the structure of creating a drug. So if you're taking a lot of drugs or you've been on medications for a long time, there is a chance that you're getting, more fluoride than the average person. Now, these are things to consider because, again, fluoride is affecting your thyroid, it's affecting your brain, it affects your gut. It's a poisonous compound with a lot of bad, bad, bad health effects. But again, it's poison in your mouth, it's damaging the teeth, and it's damaging your health systemically. Now, dentures themselves, I don't see why dentures would have any type of mercury in them. A denture itself, if I'm thinking correctly, is just usually going to be some type of polymer. And yes, it's good that there are fluoride free toothpaste on the market. It's become more popular. I'm going to recommend. There are some that we carry in our supplement store that are, they're physician formulated, they're practitioner grade, they are well above and beyond your average toothpaste. Even if it is a good, clean toothpaste, we use these to get some serious work done in a person's mouth and reestablishing their mouth health in general. um, I'll make a mention now in case anybody wants to go ahead and check it out. So, on our online store, you can find beyonddetox.com. You'll see our a link to our store, regen.gethealthy.store. If you type in toothpaste or even, on the top bar, you should see something about oral health, oral care. We carry a brand called uh, Botanical Research or Biocidin Botanical Research. They make 3 products that we use from their dental line called Dental Min Pro, excuse me, it's Dental Minerals Pro. Yeah, I think that's right. Dental Minerals Pro. It's a remineralizing toothpaste. It's your general toothpaste that has, I believe it has prebiotics in it. There may also be some special vitamins and other things that are inside of there. Um, some of them we use, other brands that we use have like CoQ10 and a few other things inside of them. Stuff that's good for the mouth and good for the heart. We have 2 that are like antibacterial though. It's called Dental Sidon, and that's also by the same company. I believe we have it as a 3 pack. If not, you can order them. You can order all these individually from there. But the point is we have one for remineralizing the teeth. We have one for killing any type of, whether it's spirochetes or bad bacteria or fungus or parasites that are taking up residence in your mouth, that are leading to periodontal disease, that are destroying the gum line, that are proliferating, problems like gingivitis, chronic bad breath, yeast growing on the tongue. Having a really potent kind of practitioner physician formulated um, antimicrobial blend is really powerful. It's really good. And then lastly, we have a mouth rinse that goes with that called Dental Sidon LS. Yeah, or L. Yeah, it simply it means liposomal solution. Liposome is a really cool delivery mechanism that we use to get stuff into the tissues, especially if there's compromised digestion or if we just need to deliver a big payload into cells that are not functioning properly. A liposome can get in to a cell that essentially is shut down and can't take anything in and can't remove any waste out. A liposome can get in there, deliver the payload, and also help heal the cell itself so it can start to function again. So, really powerful stuff. I love using it. It is one of the tools that we use for dental health. We'll go over some other things here later, but I want to make sure that we address this in full because there's still more stuff to get to. Uh, Real quick, I'll talk about the oral gut axis, and that just means that up here is connected into your gut as well. I think we kind of understand that this is all one tube. It starts in your mouth, and whatever you swallow can go down into the intestinal tract. It's simple enough, but you swallow over a liter of saliva a day, and that contains billions of bacteria and other stuff. And you get pathogens from periodontal disease if you got that. You got all the infections from root canals. You got all the poisons that come with that, and from the cavitations. And these are all, we're not all, but they can tend to be acid resistance, which means that your stomach acid isn't really going to do much to them. So they're going to be able to survive and get down in your small intestine in your large intestine where they don't belong, and other places too. But definitely they can get down into your intestinal tract. And we don't want them there because they're going to disrupt your microbiome. And they'll also damage the intestinal lining. That's bad. I mean, that's really bad. Because that's what leaky gut is. You damage the intestinal lining, then you start having all these holes in your gut. You get all this inflammation, and then you get all this stuff that has no business passing the border of your intestinal tract, getting in there, and then that gets into circulation. It causes the immune system to go on high alert. You start getting sensitive to foods. You start getting sensitive to certain bacteria. You start getting sensitive to a lot of stuff because your immune system is on high alert because you're getting stuff in your bloodstream that has no business being there. Yeah, and then you can kinda see the cascade, it just goes from there. That's where we start to see a lot of symptoms manifest, we start to see a lot of diseases actually take root, and, once it gets into circulation, nothing's off limits. Get a lot of stuff up here, you start to get a lot of brain problems, a lot of damage up to the brain, crossing blood-brain barrier, because of what we just talked about, starting in the mouth. A lot of times, autoimmune diseases, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, multiple sclerosis, these all things can start from what I just mentioned. You can get metabolic disorders, not alcoholic fatty liver disease is getting extremely or not popular, but prevalent now. People that don't drink. And again, cardiovascular, because this stuff is just running around your circulatory system. So, atherosclerosis, hardening in the arteries, damaging the arteries, nicking them left and right, causing plaque to build up to patch the surface. If it's constantly inflamed, nobody's coming to pave a new road. Figuratively speaking, on your arteries and vessels, all they're doing is just putting down a quick patch because it's constantly getting damaged. So those are all the kind of biological, the biochemical stuff. I want to get into the fun stuff now, stuff that nobody really talks about unless you visited a biologic dentist, which is the type of dentist I recommend. Biological dentist or holistic dentist that understands these things. Um, you can look up dentists in your area, and you can actually follow up deeper on a lot of things we're talking about tonight by looking up an organization called IAOMT. If you don't spell it right, that's fine. Search engines usually get it right, but IAOMT is essentially um, an organization of dentists doing things the natural way. They're teaching, they're educating, they have accreditations, they have directories for how you can find these dentists that do things right, and then also educating the public. So they educate practitioners, they educate the public on the dangers of um, conventional those like conventional practices, drugs, everything we're talking about here, and then what to do about it. So the electrical side of it is really cool. I mentioned earlier that it's like a circuit board. And so beyond these kind of biochemical threats we talked about, the materials themselves can create conditions that disrupt the body's electrical grid going through the mouth. So going back to chemistry, a unique property of metals is their, well, yeah, their conduct. We'll just say their conductivity. I know it can get more nuanced than that, but metals can conduct electricity. They can alter electrical flow. So bad enough, we talked about all the chemical stuff that does in your mouth, but what happens when you have mercury or other metals? Like people get gold or they just get other, you know, um, non-inert or conductive materials in their mouth. So we talk about oral galvanism. It's like a battery inside of your mouth. So when dissimilar metals, so it's bad enough when you have one metal. When you have metals that are dissimilar, it gets even worse. If they're placed in the mouth, they can create a battery, and saliva acts like the electrolyte that generates a measurable electrical current. Crazy. So we call it oral galvanization. And it creates a continuous chaotic electrical signal that goes to your head, interferes with your signals. And it also disrupts the microbiome because you're kind of like subtly frying or at least irritating the microbiome, these the good bugs that live in your mouth, and it causes all sorts of problems. So you can get something from simple like metallic taste or burning mouth syndrome, insomnia, chronic fatigue, and it also accelerates the corrosion of the metals. So you're releasing more toxic metallic or metal ions into your body. Not good. And so metals, I mean, the point is they alter your electrical body, your electrical environment. They change the salivary pH. So this metal, um, having metals in there can decrease salivary pH, so it makes it more acidic, and then this acidic environment further can accelerate metal corrosion, ion release. Um, so yeah, it's just to say that there is that component that is in there. Your body needs to maintain specific voltages, specific current. We'll just say specific electrical tolerances, depending on where it is in the body. Just like the blood has, or the body has different pHs depending on where it needs, um, depending on the specific part of the body. It needs it electrically, and it also needs it energetically. And so when we start putting metals in there, we start screwing the with the consistency of our saliva. We start messing with the microbiomes, and it starts creating essentially corrosion that can break apart those metals. And then those metals are broke off. We just talked about how chemically, biochemically, they can damage us. It's crazy. And let's just get into the energetic side of it too. I know we've been talking already for like almost an hour, and I want to get to some questions if we can, because obviously we got to talk about solutions for this too. So going back to the circuit breaker analogy, let's look at that from like an energetic standpoint too. We have like an energy flow. And, we talked about ancient Chinese medicine kind of mapped out a network of energy pathways we call meridians, and these are you could say too that they connect with the electric body. Energy and electricity, depending on who you talk to, kind of go hand in hand. Others break them apart, but let's just kind of look at them similar. We call it the body's electrical wiring. It connects all the organs, it connects all the tissues, and every single tooth happens to lie like on a specific meridian or a specific node, and connects it directly to these other organs, glands, and even the vertebrae. And so an infection, a root canal, or metal inside of a tooth can create an energetic blockage. Um, there's also an old saying that as energy flows, the blood will follow. When you look at any of these natural philosophies of medicine, especially I'd say even your Eastern style, there's always this concept that there's the spirit, that there is the energy, that there's a flow, that there's like a signal flow. And where that goes, or we'd say fields, and wherever that goes, the particle, the blood itself, it dictates that it must follow. And so when you see people work like acupunctural meridians and they hit certain points on the body and then they're able to, especially if you ever had acupuncture done well in combination with herbs and other stuff, you'll see people feel different. Like you'll see people get better. You'll see people heal. And for the Western mind, because we really aren't taught um, the energetic or the reality of field physics that our bodies are, we only look at things from biochemical, and biochemical is the lowest on the totem pole. The way that the nature of our reality is the field dictates the particle. So we've got all these fields, whether it's us as living beings, whether it's an image object, everything is a frequency. It's a field of information. And when you have interference, that's the idea of where particles actually come into being, is that they are the manifestation of two fields interfering together. That's getting into your quantum physics. This is probably not the right place to talk about it, but I kind of want to give you at least an idea of the hierarchy of our of 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 creation. So you have fields interact with each other, and those fields dictate how a particle behaves. And so when you have fields interact with each other simultaneously, then you can say this explains the phenomena of electricity. And then when we see electrical phenomena that happen simultaneously, multiple ones happening simultaneously, this gives the either illusion or the phenomena that we would call chemistry. It's interesting that chemistry has an electrical analog to everything. So we say that chemistry has pH. Oh, you're alkaline or you're acid, you're acidic. It's like, well, another way, and I think a more proper way to say it, is you're talking about um, voltage, because pH really is just a measurement of the amount of voltage. Yeah, I believe I'm saying that right. Um, kinetic energy, stored energy, things that are more alkaline, they have spent energy, they don't have anything to give, and things that have a higher pH have more ability to react. Um, I digress. We could go down that route. I don't necessarily want to, but it's just to say that in medicine, in the natural healing arts, they recognize the phenomena of energy or fields as the most primary, the most basic, like the root cause, which is dictating everything else. And so when you get the field right, then that sets the stage for the electrical systems to work right, which sets the stage for the biological body to work right. Now, there are a lot of times though that we actually have to start with just working with the body. We've got to get the toxins out, we got to get the nutrients in, and the body handles all the crazy stuff that I just mentioned. It handles the electrical wiring, it handles getting the kinks, the distortions out of your own or out of the own fields that it creates. You get coherence, and the person gets better. But um, that's just a bit of a primer, understanding that our teeth and our entire body, it has these multiple layers on them that as a practitioner we have to be aware of in order to figure out where are the problems coming from and where can we support the body so that you actually get a healing that your body is trying to do for you, because nobody wants to be sick and nobody wants to stay sick. So with that detour out of the way, let's talk a little bit about what actually happens with the teeth and what they're connected to. So our incisors and our canines, they're connected to the kidney, the bladder, the liver, and gallbladder, at least in terms of your traditional Chinese medicine understanding. Your premolars are connected with the lung and the large intestine, the molars with the stomach, the spleen, and the pancreas, and then the wisdom teeth with the heart, the small intestine, the central nervous system. And interesting enough, a lot of people get their wisdom teeth taken out. Interestingly enough, I believe still the number one, well, we'll say cardiovascular disease is the number one killer. Heart disease is the number one killer, or it's top killer for people in America. Now, does that mean that there is a causation? No, no, that'd be foolish to think that getting the wisdom teeth taken out causes heart disease. No, um, I would just say, that's a curious thing. Maybe there's some type of connection there, because if you remove the tooth, you're essentially you're putting a gap in the grid, whether it's the electrical grid or the energy grid. Interestingly enough, there are certain implants, the best implants that I've heard people consistently say that you want to get if you were to do implants in your teeth. Because I understand sometimes they fall out, sometimes you have to get extracted, sometimes you get hit in the mouth, and or you get into a car crash and you got to replace those teeth. Zirconium, pure zirconium. Zirconium implants are usually considered the best. The reason why is this weird phenomenon: your teeth signal in light. They communicate and signal and conduct light. Actually, your whole body does that too. We're not going to get into all the details of how that works and why that works, but um, you know, um, your body communicates, transfers photons. We do have therapies for these things called photobiomodulation. Um, you do have quorum sensing, which is an interesting thing that microbes are able to do. They're able to talk to each other, communicate, and communicating through light is a really interesting aspect of your body that does not get talked about enough in many circles, but it is a phenomenon. And so a zircon is a type of crystal that is able to properly transfer, communicate, amplify, with say energetic electric signals, similar or closest to what a tooth does. So by popping that in there, mm, popping a tooth in, let's say if you use like a premolar or lose a canine, you pop one in, you're still able to get a lot of the communication signaling energetically or electrically of that tooth through the mouth. So the grid's not completely blown out. You get the communication that the organ needs through that meridian. That's pretty cool. That's really cool. When was the last time your dentist talked to you about stuff like that? But we say this is just part of um I guess you'd say that this is just part of our um lingo, as natural practitioners, that we're thinking in these terms. I mentioned that some of the research we get comes from, I say, Northern and Eastern Europe and over in Asia. An interesting thing is, it was described to me years ago that if you kind of look at Europe. Now, if you go to Western Europe versus Eastern Europe over to the Orient or out to Asia, you see the ones on the eastern side go a lot more into your electric and field physics, whereas the west of Europe went heavily into biology and chemistry. And so a lot of our sciences that we benefit from or that we know are biochemical. They're concerned with the particle, they're concerned with matter, with reductionistic materialism. Whereas the people who got to study the Northern Lights, and unfortunately, those that got stuck into communism with absolutely no money for funding for anything, yes, they got inventive, and started studying things that were free, fields and electricity. So it is interesting. Here in the West, sometimes it's hard to imagine anything else that's not chemistry or materialistic. But if you've had the benefit of learning from other cultures or even looking at a lot of the engineers from whether it's Scandinavia, Russia, or out in the East, you're going to see a lot of things that are more energetic and electric in nature. I mean, Nikola Tesla, he was one of the reasons why he was such a brilliant mind is because, he was looking at a lot of these things that we're talking about here. He studied a lot of energy, started a lot of electrical theory. And when you get into looking at that, the laws that govern those sciences and the quantum realm as well, you have to rethink everything you knew. And of course, those were so shocking, those discoveries that I believe it was Niels Bohr. Yeah. One of your fathers of quantum physics, I believe it was him that actually committed suicide over the implications of what he discovered. 'Cause a lot of it doesn't make sense. I tell a lot of people that, you know, maybe we live in a very, very, very detailed hologram. Um, So what we consider the real world is a shadow of a larger reality. It's like, well, scripture said that. So, I don't have a problem with it. God lives, when we say heaven, or God lives outside of our own time domain. I'm fine with that. But I digress. Let's get back to talking about teeth. Let's see if we have anything else on the meridians. No, pretty much everything that I said about the electrical, you could apply to the tooth, to the energetic system as well. Metal's going to block. Metal's going to block electrically. Metal's going to interfere with the fields. Metal's going to interfere with transmitting information. And so is infection. Infected root canal cavitation can create areas of intense inflammation, energetic disturbance, almost kind of like creating static on a line. And so it's going to disrupt the signal to the connected organ. Um, you could think about it like having a loose timing belt in your car. It's the fact that everything needs to be done in sync as well. Not only does the organ need to get the information, it needs to get it in rhythm and synchronicity with the others because your body is this symphony of trillions of cells that on the one hand are kind of autonomous and on the other hand they're all working in uniform fashion. So we would say that every cell has like an antenna that it's getting and receiving messages and knows what to do, and this depends on proper communication signals and proper timing. So let's talk about solutions. Well, the first thing is, if you have cavitations, if you have metal fillings, if you have a root canal, don't go and try to get all this stuff remedied immediately. If you have a root canal, maybe you talk with your dentist about it. A lot of times that they'll talk about having an extraction done. And, that might be one of the best things to do. I don't like root canals. I don't like leaving root canals as they are, but, I'm not a dentist. I would say talk with your dentist to see if there's a way you can make that better because you don't want that root canal just to stay as it is. I don't I wouldn't. I'd say if it were me, I would not choose to have that. And I think that there's a lot of good reason for that. Cavities, if you're gonna get a filling, there's polymers that are out there, inert materials. So if it's not something that you want to see if you can repair naturally, with natural things that you really need to get something done to it, um, I would suggest seeing what your best polymers are. Get something that's inert. Don't get something that's metal for all the reasons that we just said. Um, I think a polymer would just be a better alternative to putting metal in the mouth because it's inert, not metal conductive. Or, um, if you're dealing with something like gingivitis, periodontal disease, we really need to work on the health of the microbiome. I would really consider getting those products I had mentioned for the teeth. Probably stop washing your mouth out with antibacterial alcohol. You do need uh, bacteria in your mouth. You just need the right type. Now, I'm not sure how. I'm not really sure people believe that you can really do much to your tooth health. Like once it's already gotten bad. I mean, we're pretty much taught that once things are gone bad, there's nothing you can do, and you need a lot of drugs or dental changes. I would say, dude. Well, what do I want to say about this? I guess the simplest thing I say is try stuff that works. Try things that work. They're good toothpaste that are fluoride free. As I just mentioned, we've got a line of biobotanical research on our website that works really well. There are a couple of other honorable mentions. I don't stock these, but I use them and I really like them. They are one is called Revitin, Revitin. They make a good toothpaste. It's very similar to the Dentalmin Pro. It's usually why I just recommend the Dentalmin Pro, but I do like Revitin. There's also another one we use. It's their whole dental line. They have this tooth serum that I think is really good. It's called Alpha Vedic. I think it's Alfavedic, but they make a tooth serum. They make a lot of cool products, but I would check those out, especially if you want something to get really fresh breath. The tooth serum liquids are extremely potent. Supplement wise, there's many other things we can do too. I mean, we can do parasite cleanses. We can do things in the organs to help. Because as I said before, it's a two-way street. So whatever we do here, like if you're one of our clients and you work with us through programs, then usually you start to see oral health improve as well. The tongue gets better, the teeth get better, the gums get better. But some simple solutions, because I see somebody's talking about water and pH and stuff. Um, get off the sodas. Sodas eat away at can eat away at the enamel of the teeth. Eat real food. Eat organic. Try to get away from pesticides as much as you can. It's not going to be totally possible to get away from that, but don't drink water out of the tap. It's got a lot of junk in it. Fluoride's probably in there. A lot of pharmaceuticals, a lot of pesticides, a lot of stuff that you don't know, and whether it could be heavy metals, radioactive particles, they can be in the water. So that should be a given. Um, Clean air. We don't think about, especially how many people mouth breathers instead of breathing through your nose. Um, we ingest so many poisons breathing in, and those poisons again will damage our microbiome and cause all sorts of bad bugs to grow, damage the tissues, get into our circulation we don't need. So breathe clean air. You can get yourself a Remy Halo or an iWave unit into your central duct, and it'll start cleaning the air in your household. Water distillation is still my favorite. If you're worried about water or minerals leaching or hungry water, these other things, or a little sea salt in your drink, or do some fruit infusions, do something to throw minerals back in. That's fine. Regarding pH water, I don't like pH water at all. I think a lot of it is a harmful gimmick, not just a gimmick, but harmful. It has its uses. I will say it can have its uses, but I will tell you, and I'll argue with you about it, that the idea of pH, especially alkaline pH, is healthy. I think is a lot of bull. I think it's absolutely a lot of bull. I always ask people too, okay, what part of the body are you referring to? You want the stomach to be very acidic. That's how you well, that's how it works. That's how you're going to digest your protein or break down your protein, break down your nutrients. Your small intestine gets very alkaline. Your large intestine goes back to being acidic. You need to have the right pH for the right part of your body. And to tell people otherwise that you need a high pH in order to function, I think one is misguided and it leads, I think it's a fundamental misunderstanding of the electric body. And I think it leads to a lot of bad problems. But, that's a rant for another day. I will say at least if people that feel better drinking pH water, like alkaline pH water, I would suggest don't be drinking that with your food because you do not want to be reducing the pH of your stomach as it is trying to digest. I'll just leave it at that. If you're drinking alkaline water around the time that you're trying to digest food, are you inadvertently weakening your stomach acid? Because you don't want to do that. You do not want to do that. You're going to cause a lot of problems downstream. But I do understand people do feel better on pH water. Some do, but I have seen people where they take it too far and they end up hurting themselves inadvertently. And then that becomes another issue that I have to help these people fix. So, all right, let's see what else we've got in here. pH water. Yeah, years back. Let's see. Yeah, there's a lot of talk in the chat. I think most of that though is just on pH water. Yeah. So one thing I didn't talk about, and this is real interesting, is just the concept of mouth breathing. A lot of people in states have problems with mouth breathing. This comes down to nervous system tone, which is going to be influenced by the toxins, by the poisons we have, and by the food or the lack of nutrition we have. It becomes one vicious cycle. But if we end up breathing through our mouths, it can end up shaping our chin, making it weaker than it needs to be. It can end up messing with the shape and the size of the mouth and teeth coming together and crowding and not having their proper space. I believe it was the Weston A. Price Foundation as well that did a lot of the study on the jaws and the tooth structure and the tooth health of all the different cultures around the world. It was really interesting that any nation who did not adopt a modern or standard American diet, but who stuck to their ancestral diets, had strong, naturally white teeth without the need. These cultures didn't even brush their teeth. I mean, maybe they'd chew on a neem or cinnamon uh, uh, twig or bark, which just thinking about gnawing on tree bark would make people think that they're damaging their teeth. But you know, people in their natural environment, when they're healthy, their teeth would naturally get strong. They would usually be white. Some cultures would have a weird green film, and that had to do with the microbiome that was in their mouth that kind of gave them a green tint. And it sounds kind of gross, but they had strong teeth that never crowded, didn't have to pull anything out for the most part. And then once you started feeding them a lot of processed sugars, Wonder Bread, stripped food with long shelf life and has no nutrients and has been bleached to death and enhanced with petroleum byproducts, their health deteriorated. Their mouth rotted. Mm. Which, since we're talking about that, let's just talk about something simple: sugar. They say sugar rots your teeth, and I would say it may be more complicated than that. Sugar is going to feed a lot of bad bacteria, especially if you're not eating natural sugar. I mean, too much sugar is just not good for you. But if you're eating a ton of processed, highly refined carbs, not even just table sugar, but carbs, which convert to sugar, has a lot of deleterious effects on the teeth and can lead to tooth rot, to cavities. You do get people that say, "I don't eat any sweets. How am I having constant cavities?" Well, a lot of times it's because of the diet that they're eating and then also the poisons that they are inadvertently ingesting, either through breathing or what they're drinking, what they're getting, what they've been exposed to. Uh, and there's one final thing. I'm not going to get into this one tonight. It's too strange, but trauma. People that end up having either early developmental childhood trauma or whether it's ritual abuse or whether it's abuse of any type, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, um trauma can absolutely mess with I would say just about anything in the body. People just don't develop right because of that and can twist. Buddy of mine actually who we're going to have on next week was talking to me about he always jokes, I should have been a dentist. I should have been a dentist. And so I actually wanted to do this talk tonight, kind of in preparation for him coming on, because he sees so much dental problems with people that he's working with, whether they have autoimmune cases or serious debilitating disease that they've been to multiple doctors and they land on his doorstep, and he helps them. He talks about how the teeth can change, can shift. It's almost like the body is rearranging and fixing problems when people start discharging and processing trauma. And I think he's onto something with that. I mean, that didn't start with him, but uh, yeah, I think definitely think there's something onto that. And maybe we can ask him that and let him expand on that when he comes on next week. But just understand trauma, and then when you're resolving trauma, there are a lot of shifts. We actually do see facial shifts. We'll see facial structure shift itself when people start to address trauma. One thing y'all might have come across when scouring through the internet is the certain sides of the face, like the left and the right side of the face. Um, I mean, I believe this was another Chinese thing that you can tell certain you can tell with certain organs, and also kind of, is it the mother's side or is it the father's side that people are dealing with, just based on the symmetry of their face, like the left side versus the right side. You got falling lines. You've got ah, I can't even remember all the things, but maybe we'll do a thing talking about what did the ancients know about our health that we don't know today. Yeah, it might be a fun topic to talk about. But the point I'm getting at is our mouth can also be shaped by our experiences. Yeah, maybe it's not all just genetic. I would say it's not all just genetic. It's our experiences, the things that we've been through, how we've responded to them. It's also all the toxic crap that we've been exposed to that ends up shaping our body's features. And we see a lot of that shaping our face. And what's a big part of your face? Your mouth. So let me check and see. I think we have gone through everything that I wanted to tonight on this. Hopefully y'all have just kind of gotten the impact that, wow, um, what goes on in the mouth, especially all the junk that we put in it. I know a lot of people get work done on their teeth, from cavity, from fillings to root canals. This affects a lot of folks. And if you've got long term chronic conditions that you have not been able to really figure out, or they just seem to get worse no matter what you do, we might want to check the mouth. Now, I did say when it comes to getting metal out of the mouth, it needs to be done very, very, very slow. I have seen people who have gone into severe mental or disorders or severe physical disorders after getting silver fillings just taken out of the mouth by a dentist. I've seen people get really, really sick and have a lot of complex issues. And what happens is they ended up getting mercury poisoning. because when you get a drill on there and you're heating that up, you're aerosolizing and vaporizing a lot of mercury or whatever else is in there. I don't want to just blame it on mercury. There's plenty of other bad things too. Usually biological dentists and holistic dentists, they all have their own specialties that they'll do, but I've seen it where they'll put people on an IV drip of vitamin C or glutathione or something that's antioxidants or chelators that are running through their bloodstream that are anticipating and catching and trying to to grab that mercury as it is being absorbed into the body. And then they're using things like ozone, or their ozone to clean the mouth. Um, the dentist, everybody's wearing either like gas masks or certain things where they're bringing in, pure oxygen, so they're not inhaling any of this stuff. Um, interesting statistic is to go look up and see what the suicide rate of dentists are. Seems that they've had a higher rate of suicide, and one of the interesting things is I'll say, with dentists is they're exposed to a lot of I said they're exposed to mercury, I think a lot more than people realize, maybe even more than they realize. So they're definitely under stress. I don't remember what the actual figure is for that, but you always kind of had a running joke with that about the dentist and the suicide, not because of the stress or because of the people, but because they're right there looking at the dealing with the mercury, and they don't have any protection. It's sad. It's sad. But as far as I'm concerned, a lot of those offices, I think they're. I don't know. I feel bad for people that work in dental offices because of the amount of because of the amount of stuff that they aerosolize unintentionally. But what do I know? What do I know? So I'm gonna leave you with a couple of things. I always like giving solutions to people. So we talked about behavioral things, habits that you can do, good food, good water, good air. If you do have any of these cavitations, if you do have any work that's been done in your mouth, don't take any drastic measures. I would say do it carefully, do it planned, and don't try to do it all at once because you might unleash a lot of toxic junk that your body's not in a good position to handle. I wouldn't even get it to somebody who's in tip top condition. So I would really suggest that if you're going to do something like that, work with a practitioner. Start doing a few months at least a 4-month program like one that we do on detoxing your body, getting your body cleaned up and able to start handling this. Because again, those procedures can really unleash a lot of things that you might not be prepared for. Even with a root canal, root canal, there's going to be a whole lot of infections and toxins that are just unmasked. And you may not be ready for it. And I don't want you to have to needlessly go through um, a really bad bout of sickness, or as it unfortunately often can turn into, a chronic condition now that you may be dealing with for life if you don't do some real intervention. Supplement wise, we could do things systemically, antiparasitics, binders. I think binders are awesome, especially for the mouth. Oxygen style supplements that we have, like hydroxygen, love using that. And then the specific to tooth or teeth things that we have in our online store, Dentalman Pro, Dental Side, the Dental Side liposomal rinse, that works really well. Something as simple as getting a antimicrobial toothbrush, something maybe with like nano silver or silver lined in it, something like that. It helps. But, I think all of y'all know at this point, fluoride toothpaste is not, I don't think it's going to be good for you. And again, I don't think that the antibacterial, I'm trying to think of the brands. Oh well, brands don't matter, but the antibacterial alcohol stuff is just it's just not good for it's just not good for you. I don't think. Um, One final thing that I'm going to mention, it's really good here. Water pick. I don't know how many of y'all have heard of a water pick before, but it's water flossing. There's some good water flossers out there, and believe Thomas Levy. There's a few others out there, but they offer a solution. It's a certain mixture of a hydrogen peroxide and sea salt in in a ratio of water. And there's other ratios or other things that can be done out there too. But Thomas Levy was on the internet. Our guy popularized this one on the internet where yeah, you take water, you put a certain mixture, stuff that he mentioned, sea salt, I believe hydrogen peroxide. I don't remember what the certain grade was or how much was in there, but go look it up. You'll find his stuff. And him as a doctor and his clinical stuff, he talks about how people were undoing their periodontal disease or just the kind of wild health benefits that people were getting. And he's not the only one that talks about it. A lot of my doc friends say, "Yeah, I've done that. We know that. We use that ourselves." It is simple. You can wash your mouth out with that every day, and if it helps strengthen your gums, keeps them nice and pink, and you're not bleeding, and your mouth health gets better just by using old simple things like water, salt, and um, whatever else they add in there. That's great. That's great. Let me see if there's anything else in here that people have asked. Otherwise, we've been going at it for an hour and a half, so we might call it a night if nobody has any more questions. Yeah, we are definitely not talking about teeth tonight. Now we're just talking about the weather. Um, well, guys, I hope y'all enjoyed all this tonight. This was definitely a lot of stuff to go through. I really want y'all to come back next Friday when I have my guest. His name is Dr. Brendan McLaughlin. He's got a new book out. In fact, give me a second. Let me tell you what it is. I've got it right here. It's autoimmune, but I just forgot the rest of the name as I was thinking about it. But yeah, he'll be glad to answer any of the questions. The auto, is that yeah, okay. It's the autoimmune revival. Dr. Brendan McLaughlin. You can get it paperback. It's coming out on Kindle. When's it coming out on Kindle? What's coming out on Kindle real soon. Sometimes I like using the electronic versions because you can do control find or and look for what you need on there. You can't do that with a good old book. But yeah, he's going to be a wealth of knowledge, especially if you guys have any questions regarding dental stuff, because we're really probably going to touch into more dental stuff next week on the wild side. So now I know there's a big storm that's coming up. Y'all looks like y'all have already got it. I hope y'all stay safe. Um, and yeah, just tune in for next week. And y'all see me throughout the weekend. I got a couple of appearances, a surprise appearance coming up here. You know who you are. But you guys have a good night. Stay safe and tune in next week when we have our buddy Brendan come in.